Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show, and that's right, we are celebrating Emancipation Day in fine style, and if you want to know why it's important, check out your spotlight on Now.
Now, tomorrow we will be celebrating the Emancipation Day holiday, and so we're checking in with Shabaka Kambon, Education and Communications Officer at the Emancipation Support Committee, as we discuss the significance of such an important day. Shabaka, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Good. I'm on the eve of the 185th anniversary of Emancipation in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. Well, let's start there. I mean, from 185 years to now, I mean, what have we done to fully commemorate the holiday?
Well, first of all, let me say that what is happening across the world today, not just in terms of the Emancipation celebration, but the Emancipation celebration is a key part of it, is a reflection of the vision of our ancestors, of how they saw emancipation, or what we call a just emancipation. So when you hear talk about reparations, which is gaining steam everywhere, in February or March, we had the Trevelyan family come to Grenada and give their historic apology. They were a family, an elite enslaving family that owned 6 plantations in Grenada. And Laura Trevelyan, who was a former BBC journalist, leave the BBC to dedicate the rest of her life to pursuing reparations for people of the work of our ancestors, for the contemporary brothers and sisters. You begin to see the sense of the Vatican, repudiating the doctrine of discovery, which is legal and moral framework, which was launched colonialism in that brutal way. The Anglican Church in January acknowledging its historic links to slavery. And this is just part of a much larger acknowledgement of the ravages of racism and white supremacy coming out of enslavement and the impact on our people up to today. And so this historical moment, as I said, is a reflection that the vision that our ancestors had. If you go back to the writings of people like Otuba Cugoano or John Smith, his slave name, he was an African abolitionist in Europe in the 1780s, you will see that he talked about commemoration days like Emancipation Day, education for our children who had been deprived of it under the institution of slavery, restitution or compensation, reparations, and an effort to remove all forms of Afrophobia or anti-African hate, all those things that we are now engaged in. We just had the Minister of Education, let's give some credit to her, ending the legal discrimination on African hair, at least at the level of the schools. That's something that's going to have to go on right across the country.
Yes.
And that's happening not just here in Trinidad, but across the world at the same time. All these things are the reflection of the vision of our ancestors, a just emancipation, which is different to the emancipation we actually got. The emancipation we actually got was an unjust emancipation. It was an opportunity for us to begin to build freedom, not freedom itself, just like independence. Independence was the opportunity to create an independent nation, to build in, to give substance and form to independence.
So
we
coming
think
out
of
of
it
that
as the
building freedom,
end.
are we free now to express ourselves? Are we free now to be independent?
Well, it's not just about self-expression. We have inherited structures and institutions. What happened at Emancipation is that they set up the people who owned us had the majority of the power in deciding what it would look like. And so they set up institutions, laws, policies, etc., to maintain white supremacy and anti-blackness into the foreseeable future. What we're doing now, all the things I just listed to you there, with the Trevelyans, the churches, the companies, everybody passing out reparations, universities, etc. What we're doing now is giving form, and so we're finally beginning that stage of completing the process.
Yeah, and what are the expected outcomes? So, for example, I've heard about the reparations and moving forward, but I've also heard as well that there are some people who are saying we are reaping the benefits of our forefathers. And so is it right to accept the reparations? Is it, I mean, what is the stance on that? Tell me.
You're talking
because
about...
I've heard that in certain sectors, people want money and, it's for their forefathers and stuff like that.
Well, it is about addressing the contemporary, because it's not just about slavery. Reparations is not just about the compensation of slavery, but what happened after, between slavery and independence, was apartheid.
Yeah.
Right? I know that's precisely what, and that's another form of oppression very closely related to the first. It comes out of the first. That's what I'm saying. These policies, institutions, structures, etc. And those structures, structural discrimination is still a reality for us. When we talk about repair, we also have to do repair in our own society, as we just did with children. I think we can understand, what it is for an African child with less than a centimeter hair to be told, a boy, that your hair is unkempt because the way it grows out of your hair in its natural state. That's what occurred across this country in schools every day. And the impact of that psychologically on a child. I mean, these are the issues that we're facing. And I'm trying to put this into perspective with you. The way that slavery and colonialism operated, they're doing the same work on the continent of Africa, in North America, in Central America, South America, everywhere that Africans are. They are fighting these little things that might seem minor, that are undermining. I mean, if we look at it in terms of women, the economics of having to change your appearance to appear closer to Europe, to be considered professional in your everyday lives. The chemicals used in the processes to do such a thing, all of that comes from a hatred of ourselves, or a hatred from the society of the things that are us. And not just us, but all non-white peoples have to face the same kinds of structures that undermines our ability to develop and to progress.
I want to put a pin in that, Shabaka, only because I also want to switch gears now to the Emancipation Support Committee. A lot of activities would be happening tomorrow. Tell us about it.
Well, every year the Emancipation Support Committee, and I want to give a special credit this year to our new chairman, Sister Zakia Wadada, who's done a marvelous job with the Savannah. If you haven't been down there, you have to go down there. I mean, this is, I sat with Brother Abiola, who was previously in charge of the village at it, and his sense of pride, the elder statesman of the Emancipation Support Committee, Sister Gamba, over the years has contributed her own sense of style and so on to the village. I see that sense of pride in my father. Beautiful, beautiful space that is now attracting entrepreneurs, as I say, African entrepreneurs from all over the world, particularly proud of the relationship with those from Ghana and the rest of the continent. So there's so much to see, to do, to purchase, to engage in, to make contacts, network. I know that now, on eve of emancipation, people call their Ghanaian friends and order their clothes to be brought in. That's where, it's no longer, people are no longer waiting for them to come, So there's all kinds of networks of business and so on that are happening right there at what we call the village, the festival center at the Savannah.
Well, to build off of that, we also have the Asantehene, who I believe is supposed to be visiting tomorrow. I mean, don't just tell us about his visit, but tell us about the importance of his visit at this time as we're celebrating Emancipation Day.
Well, I think that in terms of African royalty, it's the most important royalty we've had here since Haile Selassie in the 60s and 70s, just to put things into perspective. Of course, Haile Selassie was coming as an African leader who, in the minds of people, had just been victorious over Europe and protected a segment of Africa from colonial rule. And so he took on a kind of mythical status. Of course, he's been deified across the Caribbean for what he did. But if you think back to what he did for African people in terms of people who emerged from slavery, who were still under colonialism, who would have been told that they should be grateful for enslavement because it took them away from something called the Dark Continent. And here was a royal who was coming here who, you had images of the Queen of England bowing to him and so on. So it was, it put a lie to the story they had been told about themselves. And I think the Asantehene does something very similar, coming from what would have been called the Gold Coast, the richness of the continent of Africa, moves and travels with him in a way that gives us a different sense of our own possibilities and our own history. So it's quite an extraordinary visit. And of course, at the level of business, people are really keen now. Ghana is one of the fastest developing economies on the continent and so on, to engage with those aspects of his diplomatic entourage and so on that are in that area, so we can build those links with the continent that would have been severed.
Shabaka, I have to ask, so on Emancipation Day, we don the outfits. You made the joke about people ordering their fabric straight from Ghana. We attend the parades and that sort of thing. What can we do to truly understand the importance of such a holiday? Not just attending the parades or going down to the village, but if there are at least one thing you want us to remember about Emancipation as we go into the holiday tomorrow, what would that be?
Well, Emancipation is unfinished business. And if you go back to the 19th century, from the 1840s, the way our ancestors celebrated Emancipation, they came together as after the parties and the limes and the whatever they did at that time, the drumming sessions, and we have our drummers here, welcome. We came together to look at our historical moment and to see what we would need to do to advance that one step from this year to the next. And so it's really also an important time to contemplate, and at this time, the way that structural discrimination continues to undermine and affect the development of African people in this country. We need to look critically at the content of the education system. We need to look critically at the education system itself and to see if there is not real living discrimination happening up to today. And I tell you that we are going to be speaking out much more vocally about things like that as we move into the future. Our work is not just about the festival, but about caretaking some of the more challenging issues that affect our people in this society.
Yeah, and I think we're going to pause there for now. Shabaka, let me thank you so much for coming in. I know the work continues. You're going to be very busy over the next few hours as we look to Emancipation Day tomorrow.
But there's so much to look forward to at the village. There's going to be workshops and activities for the children, capoeira, African martial arts, drumming, etc., etc. There's going to be something happening all the time. Yeah. You have to be there.
Find yourself there tomorrow in the village. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Kimberly.
And that, of course, was Mr. Shabaka Kambon, the Education and Communications Officer at the Emancipation Support Committee, just sharing about the importance of celebrating and commemorating Emancipation Day, which will be tomorrow. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.
For a few dollars more, we could settle the score. And for a handful of beads, we could